Okay, when we hear the story of Noah's Ark, we usually picture, a cartoonish little boat packed with smiling giraffes and elephants, right? But let's dive right into this explainer and look at this ancient narrative through a completely different lens. Let's look at it as one of the most grueling, literally impossible, logistical mega projects in all of human history. Our sources describe an Earth just overflowing with violence and corruption, leading the Creator to declare a total reset. And right at the center of this reset is a single man tasked with an engineering feat that absolutely defies logic. I mean, imagine trying to build a massive, 137-meter-long, 23-meter-wide, 3-story high ship in the middle of dry land. To put that into perspective, we're talking about a vessel the length of nearly 1.5 football fields. It had the interior volume of over 500 standard railroad cars, and Noah had to pull this off long before steel saws, modern cranes, or honestly even a basic wheelbarrow existed. He didn't have a team of architects or a master blueprint, he just had specific dimensions and raw, back-breaking determination. And while attempting this absolute engineering miracle, Noah had to deal with relentless mockery. Think about the immense psychological toll here. You've got villagers gathering around, laughing, asking, "What is this giant boat doing in the dust? Do you honestly expect it to float on air?" They hadn't even seen a flood before. To them, he was just a madman clearing a massive plot of land for absolutely no reason. Yet day after day, he just kept swinging his axe. Now, the sources detail that the Creator, deeply grieved by the rampant evil and corruption, decreed a 120-year limit on mankind, choosing only the righteous Noah and his family to survive this coming judgment. So what does this mean for our builder? It means Noah wasn't just working against the elements. He was working against a divine, ticking clock. Every single swing of that axe was quite literally one step closer to an apocalyptic deadline. To actually survive the coming cataclysm, Noah was instructed to use gopher wood, which is widely understood to be this massive, incredibly dense cypress timber. And this one instruction instantly shifted his mandate from quiet spiritual devotion to brutal physical labor. We're not talking about small pine trees here. These are incredibly dense, heavy giants. The idea of felling hundreds of them by hand without modern chainsaws, it's just a staggering concept to wrap your head around. But here's a hidden logistical nightmare the sources reveal. Before he could even cut a single piece of wood, Noah had to prepare the ground. The ancient texts say the earth back then was watered by ground mist, which made the soil constantly soft and muddy. So Noah had to dig these massive drainage trenches just to find solid footing for a 137-meter structure. Think about it. If the ground settled unevenly, the entire hull of the Ark would warp and completely shatter before the rain even started. Seriously, think about the staggering effort required here without machines. Every single day, it was just the rhythmic thud of Bronze Age axes. To even move the wood, they had to place small wooden cylinders under massive logs and drag them with ropes, inch by agonizing inch. And since no single tree is anywhere near 137 meters long, they had to engineer a continuous keel. They did this by painstakingly splicing huge logs together using custom geometric cuts and heavy wooden pegs. This keel was literally the spine of a floating city. Once that massive wooden skeleton was finally up, they faced the ultimate hazard: waterproofing. To keep the vessel from sinking, they had to boil thick, tar-like pitch over open flames and meticulously seal every single joint, crack, and corner, inside and out. It was exhausting, highly toxic work, and the stakes? Absolutely huge. If even one major seam was missed, the water pressure from the flood would tear the ship apart, and decades of unimaginable labor would just end in drowning. Now, the layout of the Ark wasn't just for, keeping things tidy. It was actually vital for the ship's physics. By placing the heaviest animals on the bottom deck, they acted as natural ballast. This brilliantly lowered the center of gravity, which kept the massive, top-heavy ship from capsizing in the incredibly violent, chaotic waters of the flood. Medium animals took the middle deck, and then the lightest creatures, the birds, and the absolute crucial ventilation systems were up at the top. So beyond just fitting everyone inside, Noah essentially had to design an enclosed, fully sustainable micro-ecosystem capable of keeping thousands of creatures alive and healthy for months. He had to build sturdy individual stalls so animals wouldn't crush each other when the ship inevitably rolled. He built massive storage for dried food, grain, and fresh water. And crucially, because, you can imagine the smell of thousands of cooped-up animals, he desperately needed top-level ventilation to clear out the toxic methane gases that would otherwise just build up and suffocate them. The boarding process itself? The texts describe it as a true miracle in its own right. I mean, Noah didn't have to form a massive hunting party to go out and trap all these creatures. 7 of every clean animal and 2 of every unclean animal arrived organically.
Predators and prey just walked together in a calm, orderly line, guided by an unseen force, right up the ramp and straight into their designated stalls.
Once Noah's family of 8 and all the animals were safely tucked inside, a really profound moment occurs. The sources specifically note that while Noah built the massive wooden door, it was God who actually shut it. This finalized a chilling contrast. Inside, you have order, preparation, and divine protection, but outside, the mockery of the villagers suddenly turned to absolute panic as the sky grew completely dark.
Because you see, the cataclysm wasn't just a heavy rain falling from the sky. The sources vividly describe that the fountains of the deep burst open. Subterranean waters violently erupted from beneath the earth under immense pressure, literally shaking the very foundations of the ground. It was an apocalyptic combination of torrential rain from above and massive geological upheaval from below. And the Ark, which had been sitting on dry land for decades, suddenly groaned, lifted, and began to float.
The timeline of the flood paints a picture of incredible, grinding endurance. We're not talking about surviving a quick weekend storm here. They spent over a year locked inside a dark, noisy vessel with no rudder, no sails, and absolutely zero steering. Every single day meant feeding animals, cleaning stalls, and just trusting that their giant wooden box would somehow hold together on a raging, endless ocean.
At the absolute height of the flood, water levels rose 15 cubits upward, completely swallowing the highest mountain peaks. Every single trace of the corrupt, violent world they once knew, every city, every forest, was entirely wiped away. Inside the Ark, there was no window to look out of at eye level, just the deafening roar of water and the constant, terrifying groaning of massive cypress timbers. But then, after 150 days of drifting aimlessly, a sudden shift occurs. The massive hull of the Ark doesn't violently crash, but instead gently grinds to a halt, resting securely on the peaks of the mountains of Ararat. The violent rocking finally, thankfully, stops. But the ordeal wasn't quite over. They still had a long wait ahead of them for the waters to actually drain. To figure out if the outside world was survivable yet, Noah basically used birds as ancient airborne scouts. First, a raven flew restlessly back and forth. Then a dove was sent out but returned, finding absolutely nowhere to land. But a week later, the dove returned with a freshly plucked olive leaf. That tiny green leaf was a monumental symbol. Life was finally returning. And when the dove didn't return a third time, Noah knew for sure the land was ready. Imagine the absolute sensory shock of God finally calling them out of the Ark. After over a year locked in a dark, noisy, frankly foul-smelling wooden box, they finally step out. They breathe fresh air. They feel solid ground under their feet for the first time in months. And they look out into a silent, ruined, but totally cleansed new world. The animals disembark peacefully, spreading out to repopulate the globe.
Now, what's really fascinating to me is what Noah does next. Rather than immediately rushing to build a home, plant fields, or, secure his family's material future in this wild new frontier, his very first act is purely spiritual. He constructs an altar and offers sacrifices out of a profound gratitude for their survival. He deeply recognized that it wasn't just his incredibly hard engineering work that saved them, it was divine grace.
And in response to this fateful act, the Creator makes an everlasting covenant, a binding promise to all of humanity and to the earth itself. He promises that never again will all living creatures be wiped out by floodwaters. He guarantees that as long as the earth endures, the predictable, comforting cycles we rely on, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, will absolutely never cease.
As the ultimate seal of this promise, a rainbow appeared in the sky. Now think about it. For ancient people who had literally just survived a global deluge, a storm cloud would have been a deeply terrifying sight. But this visual marker, a bow in the clouds, served as a stunning reminder, perfectly balancing divine justice with profound, enduring mercy. It was basically a cosmic signature declaring that the storm was truly over.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, we are left with a really powerful reflection. Because this isn't just a historical story about ancient shipbuilding or surviving a crazy storm, it's a profound look at faith, at choosing obedience in the face of intense mockery, and being willing to do the hard, grinding work when literally no one else understands. It leaves us asking, when the overwhelming storms of life inevitably rise up, where do you choose to build your safety?